Welcome to Smashterpieces, a casual walk through the history of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. My name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And if you're new to this show, what we are doing here is we are playing one game for every character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, all the way from 1984's Duck Hunt to 2017's Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Man, you're saying more things in that intro now.
Yeah, I'm just going to keep adding every week. This week's game, or I guess, well, no, it's not incorrect to say this week's game right now.
Well, technically our next intro is probably going to be the longest, because we'll have to explain who on earth we are. Very
likely. But today's game is our first and only visit to the Sega Genesis.
For now.
For now. It is the game representing fighter number 38, Sonic the Hedgehog. It is the 1992 Sega Genesis game, Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Man, shout out to the Genesis.
Sure was a thing.
It is always so weird doing these third-party games, because we've been doing a lot of first-party Nintendo games. You see the credits for those, you see the same names a couple times, and then you get to this game and you don't recognize any of the names in these credits.
I mean, I recognized a couple just because, like, Yuji Naka, obviously, I recognize him. But, like, yeah, it's a little weird to, and also just to say, like, yeah, it's time to talk about our Super Smash Brothers podcast, and we're going to talk about a game on the Sega Genesis. Like, that's weird.
A little bit.
Like, even still, despite the fact that Sonic was announced, like, a decade ago, and has been a mainstay in Smash since?
Well, this is the first time that we have actually left a Nintendo system. Like, even Mega Man was on the NES.
Yes, and technically even Street Fighter 2, despite starting as an arcade game, came out on the SNES.
Yeah, so this...
Like, Castlevania is an NES mainstay.
It is not the last time we'll be leaving Nintendo systems, but it's the first time we've done that, even though this is not the first third-party character we've done.
Yeah, and this is also probably the most important third-party character. Like, historically, for Nintendo themselves, this was the most significant get as a third-party character in Smash history. It was still one of those, it'll never happen, but God, it should, things until it did.
And now it's kind of old hat. Like, if you remember the back in the Everyone Is Here trailer, they did the reveals sort of like in a more dramatic way. Like, you get all the characters you expect, and then, you know, boom, ice climbers, yeah, and then some more characters you expect. Oh, here's our newcomer, Inkling. And then more characters you expect, and then, third-party characters, Ryu and Cloud, and then you get the big Everyone Is Here drop. And Sonic was in one of those blocks of all the characters you expect.
Yeah, he's, like I said earlier, he's a mainstay in Smash now, and has been for like a decade.
He is like one step away from being a Nintendo character.
He basically. So, obviously, Sonic has had a rough go of it for a long time. Long time after this game.
He's got his ups and downs.
And the game that came after it. He's got his ups and downs, mostly downs.
I'd say about half and half.
I don't know if I'd go that far. Sonic Forces did come out last year.
Well, these people always forget to count, like, the Sonic Advance series in this list whenever you're comparing. Sonic Advance is incredible. I'd say you generally have as many good Sonic games as bad.
This is true, and I say Sonic Forces came out last year like Sonic Mania didn't, even though it did. So, you know, you might have a point. I think it's about half and half. He doesn't have the, like, almost flawless track record that, say, Mario has, but, like, he comes from roughly the same pedgree.
I'm curious now. I'm going to go down the list, and we'll sort these into good and bad.
Oh, boy.
So, and we'll keep a running list. Can you just keep a running number, good and bad? Like, just open a notepad document.
I'll just write it on this paper that I have in front of me.
So, Sonic 1, good.
Good.
Aged poorly, but still good. Sonic 2, good. Sonic Spinball, bad. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, good. Sonic Adventure. That one's tough.
That's a hard one to categorize.
It was good in
1998.
It was good in 1998.
But are we going to mark it under good?
We'll say bad.
Yeah, let's say, if you haven't replayed Sonic Adventure anytime soon and you're thinking, what are they talking about? That game's really good. Go replay it.
Sonic Adventure 2. Let's count that for 3 games. One of them's good, 2 of them are bad. Sonic Advance. Good. Sonic Heroes. Bad. Shadow. Bad. Sonic 2006. Bad. Unleashed. Bad. Colors. Good. Generations, good. Lost World.
Most people say that's bad.
Bad.
I see a lot of people claim it's either bad or mediocre. I've never seen somebody say that Lost World is great.
Sonic Boom.
Sure was a video game made by people.
And Sonic Mania. Good.
And so what
was Sonic Advance wasn't even on this list. What the fuck? Well, Sonic Advance 1, 2, 3. They were good. All 3 of them were good.
It's looking like about half. I'm not going to count
Sonic
these
Forces,
actual marks
bad.
I made, but Sonic Forces is very bad.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's about half and half.
But like I said, like Sonic came from roughly the same pedigree as Mario, being that he ended up...
Oh, Sonic CD. Good.
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Being that he ended up the mascot of a, at the time, massive game developer and console manufacturer. In fact, Sonic was made as a direct response to Mario.
Yeah.
In every way.
He's a character that is locked in the 90s.
He is so locked in the 90s, it's insane.
His core identity is being the cooler alternative to Mario. So now, many years later, when he's no longer directly competing with Mario, where does that leave him? And the answer is, it doesn't leave him anywhere in particular, so they don't know what to do with him with any given game. So sometimes you get games like Sonic Colors, which is incredible. And then you get games like, I don't want to necessarily count Sonic Boom because that's a whole can of worms with, like, development hell. Because they learned, like, halfway through development, they were told, oh, this game is going to be exclusive to a platform that doesn't support the engine you've been building this game on.
That sounds about
I'm not going to count that as a misguided idea, but Sonic Forces was a misguided idea.
Yeah.
So it's Sonic has been all over the place. But the game we're here to talk about today is firmly in the 90s when he was the hottest shit around.
This is the last game on our list that was out before I was born.
I think I've still got like 1 or 2. No, this is the last one for me too.
Yep. This game came out. You have the exact date written on the official
November
spreadsheet.
21st, 1992 was the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on Genesis.
Almost exactly a month before I was born, this game came out.
So, Sonic 2, we realized very last minute, we probably should have chose Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but because of the timing with, how we're doing Kirby, we couldn't switch. But Sonic 2, I still think, is a really good game.
I had a much better time than I expected. Granted, I had Rewind the whole time. I played specifically the Steam version of Sonic 2, which comes on the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive collection. And you played a GameCube version?
Yes, Sonic Mega Collection.
There's no real easy way to buy this game off of Steam right now, which is weird to me. The Wii had plenty of Sonic games. The Wii U did not.
It's because the most recent port of it, which is actually widely considered to be the best port, is on mobile.
Yeah. And that was made by the people who would go on to make Mania, wasn't it? No, he made...
Yes.
Oh, yes, it was. Because he started with CD, didn't he? He did CD and then he did 2?
Yes.
So...
And I believe the Android port actually restored some content that was cut from the original game.
Interesting. Obviously, neither of us played the Android version because you can't stream from an Android phone. Neither. Well, you can, but we can't.
Yeah.
So that would have put the kibosh on that. That, and I, specifically because I don't have a ton of money to throw around, I was just going to play the version I already owned.
Yes.
So that's how I ended up playing the Steam version specifically, because I already had it. Even though it's really cheap on Steam, it's like $1.30. So if you want a good place to play it, not on a phone, that's going to be your best shot. But like you said, the phone version is currently considered the best port of Sonic 2.
Somehow.
Which is really weird. That's never the case. Ever. For anything else. But I said last episode, I'm not a huge fan of Sonic games. They're not my cup of tea. I'm not the biggest fan of Sonic as a character. I don't really have a super great time playing Sonic games. I had a better time playing this game than I expected to. So there's that, I suppose. But again, I had Rewind, which helped a lot. So
I think you never really got the hang of, like, trying to be in spin dash form all the time.
I think a lot of it was playing with the arrow keys. I think that was throwing me off a lot.
Oh, you didn't even have a controller?
I didn't have a controller. I was playing it with a keyboard.
Oh,
so that might have been part of it. Yeah, that's one thing that I kind of had a lot of issues with, was switching to ball form and staying in ball form.
That would do it.
It was just... And I have some weird things to say about the game's design, and I mentioned these to you before we started playing, or not playing, before we started recording. And that is, there's this... I don't think I've had any game so far on this list where I can say an equal amount of, man, they really thought this out, and it's really clever. And then also the same amount of things of, well, fuck you too, I guess.
I don't believe that starts to happen until way at the tail end of the game. I would say that for the most part, the game is solid and I love it until you get to Metropolis Zone Act 1, at which place it is no longer a good game. Just turn it off, you're done.
See, I wouldn't go... So, like, this isn't me saying, like, oh, some of these levels are bad. It's just certain things sort of rub me the wrong way. But I want to highlight some of the, like, really good stuff first, such as there were a ton of moments where it works hard to introduce you to threats before they actually become a threat most of the time. And also new mechanics. It doesn't just shove them at you and then say, maybe eventually they'll figure it out. And I think the best example of that is the instant you start Mystic Cave Zone. You run up and you're on this bridge and there's nowhere to go. And you're just like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Maybe I gotta break through the bridge with ball form, which is what I thought. So your first instinct is to jump. And then Sonic automatically grabs a vine hanging above him and pulls it down and opens the bridge. And immediately you know, oh, that's a mechanic. All right, cool. Like, stuff like that is really, really well thought out, and I was very impressed by it.
Yeah, on the whole, this game is pretty well done, I think. It's not until much later in the game, which most players in the 90s without save states are not expected to be able to get to, all things considered. But it's not until later in the game that those things start to break down. Like, they still introduce you to things well and teach you things well, but the things they're teaching you and introducing you to aren't a lot of fun, in my opinion. Like, in Metropolis Zone, the screws that you run on to have them go up the pillar, while those starfish things are shooting at you, I hated that.
Yeah, that's
and
not great. Basically
all of Winged Fortress, I hated that.
A lot of Winged Fortress, and I think there was one other zone where I had this exact problem, where what's it called? What is the third zone called?
Third? Aquatic Ruin.
Aquatic Ruin Zone. Those two zones seem to be built on the idea of, I know how to make this hard. We'll make it so that they can't see anything. Constantly. All fucking time. Aquatic Ruin Zone is a lot worse with it, where, like, the central gimmick of the level is, fuck you, you can't see. Shut up. And I didn't like that. That's a part that, like, no, thank you. And I agree with you on the screws in Metropolis, by the way, that I feel like if the starfish enemies weren't there, it would be a little bit better. And also,
it wouldn't even matter. They'd be fine.
Oh, and also maybe if when they left the screen, they went back to where they were, or there was like a switch. If you fell off and you weren't just stuck, and screwed. That'd be great.
Yes, that would be much better. They geared a little too far towards get it right the first time, the later you got into the game.
Well, I also, and this isn't really get it right the first time, but I have a small issue with, Chemical Plant Act 2. So the thesis statement of this game is, it is a platformer where you move really fast. And that's at its core what Sonic games are supposed to be, or what this game is supposed to be going for. And obviously there are points where you gotta slow down a bit, because if you go fast, you're gonna die. But most of the time, it's pretty easy to, see when those are coming, except in certain spots, like the first time you encounter a moving platform in Chemical Plant 2. Oh, what's that? You didn't see the moving platform? Too bad, idiot. You were moving fast in this game about moving fast. Now you're in the water. I hope you die. Fuck you. And it's parts like that I wasn't a big fan of. And before this, I think Aquatic Ruin Act 1 was as far as I had ever seen in Sonic 2. So I expected more of that, because that was one of the things that initially has turned me off on classic Sonic games for so long, is because I expected more of the game to be like that, and pleasantly surprised that a lot of it was not. Luckily. There are some spots, like in, I think, Hilltop Zone has a lot of that.
Hilltop Zone ain't great. I don't think there's a huge problem with it, but it's also, boring at best.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know. I think overall this is a fairly well-designed level, or game. Not level. But I kind of agree that Metropolis and Oil Ocean are about the spot where it's just we just sort of gave up on making a fair game.
Oil Ocean I didn't have a big problem with. There were a couple specific spots in Oil Ocean that were stupid, but on the whole, I didn't mind it. Metropolis just isn't great.
And that's the only one that's 3 acts. Thanks, Sega.
Yeah.
Of all of the ones to be that.
I would argue that Sky Chase, Winged Fortress,
they're basically
Death Egg.
one zone on their own.
Yeah. One big 3-act zone is what I would say.
Speaking of those 3, I don't think those 3 are a good finale. Sky Chase especially?
No.
Specifically because it tonally doesn't fit what I'd think of when I think of a finale.
I think Winged Fortress... I think the theme that's going on, I think that's good. The music just sucks.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that more in detail later, but Winged Fortress is not great. I think the level is all right, I guess, if not forgettable, and those chickens can eat my whole ass.
All of it?
All of the whole thing. I don't think the fight with the actual, it's called the Death Egg, right? I don't remember what it's called. The big
Death Egg robot?
Yeah,
the Death Egg robot.
Yeah, the Death Egg robot. I don't think that fight is very well done, simply because those claws, those hitboxes felt a little bit finicky to me, is the thing. I'd have multiple moments where, I hit it, and I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the claws, but no, there go all my rings.
That's unfortunately the thing. Well, no, your rings didn't go anywhere because you didn't have any.
Oh yeah, that's also... You know what? That's true. Both of those boss fights, the game expects you to do them without rings.
Yeah, so this was not something you encountered because you were using the rewind function, but if you die against the Death Egg robot, you have to go back to Silver Sonic.
Which is kind of shitty. It brings us back to the whole conversation we had about checkpointing in Mario 2 USA, which is, why were we so bad at it back then?
Yeah, it's really...
This game wasn't made for an arcade!
Why are there no rings in Death Egg Zone?
There is absolutely no excuse for there to not be any rings.
Because Silver Sonic would be a really good boss if there were rings.
If it wasn't, you fuck up once, you're dead.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Most games that do a system of you fuck up once, you are dead, aren't great. I can't think of really any game that pulls that off well.
There are some, but the difference is that they're way more short form, like Super Meat Boy, for example. Super Meat Boy, you take one hit, you're dead, and then you're right back where you started 10 seconds ago.
Yeah, Meat Boy gets away with it because it's an instant restart, or like VVV does it, but
and there's no life limit either.
There's no such thing as a game over in those games, and so we learned that eventually. Obviously, this is 1992. Fine, whatever. We should have known by now because, guys, we've almost covered 10 years of video game history on this show, and we're still talking about this.
I think, honestly, the problem is no rings. I could deal with it because the life system in Sonic 2 is actually pretty forgiving, especially if you do the special zones. If every time you get 100,000 points, which if you're doing the special zones and playing really well in the stages, it happens pretty often. Every time you get 100,000 points, you get a free continue. So if you get you don't actually get a game over until you've lost all of your lives like 3, 4, or 5 times, which is great. I think since Sonic is such a short game, I'm fine with that. I'm cool with that. I would have liked to be able to save and walk away from my console, but it's just not that kind of game. So I'm okay with it. Until you get to a final boss fight with 0 rings and you need to memorize the pattern to win. Because at that point, like, you can't learn the pattern. And one mistake it's over. And it's basically just a big fuck you, because how are you supposed to learn that pattern when, if you make 3 mistakes, suddenly now you have 2 hours of gameplay before you can get back to this point?
Like, it's always really funny to me, the fact that the same people that defend that kind of thing as, that's just how video games should be, just get good, why can't you just get good, are the same people that'll be like, Dark Souls is the greatest designed game that has ever been on the face of the earth. Because Dark Souls is built around, you have enough time to at least learn something before you have died.
And Dark Souls has unlimited lives.
Yes, there is that too.
Like, Dark Souls is more forgiving than the final boss of Sonic 2. The entirety of Dark Souls is more forgiving than the final boss of Sonic 2.
So would you say...
No, I wouldn't.
That
no, I would not.
Is
I
the
would
final
not.
boss of Sonic
I would
2
not.
is the Dark Souls of Sonic boss fights. So is the show just canceled now, or are we just canceling the show?
That's it.
Or...
We're done. Okay, so good things about this game, though. Casino Night Zone. Casino Night Zone's
Casino
really
Night Zone
good.
is fun.
Really good.
It's very fun. All of the levels, I'm going to say this, while they don't really thematically fit with each other at all, and to be fair, this is a 90s platformer. They don't really have to. Every level has a sort of distinct feel on its own, though some of the later levels sort of fall off a little bit on that. But they all have their own distinct look, their own distinct feel, their own mechanics. Every level is a different experience.
And overall, they're all really good.
They're all pretty good levels.
You start out with Green Hill 2 Electric Boogaloo, and then Chemical Plant Zone gets things really going. And like Chemical Plant Zone is just an incredible act, and incredible zone. And the music is great. The theme is great. I think that it introduces water pretty fairly, because you only really die to water if you make a big mistake and then can't correct it. Like, it also introduces new mechanics like the pipe system that you go through. It's just generally really great. And then Aquatic Ruin, while I know you had problems with the game design aspect of it, aesthetically, it's super, super solid. And it's kind of a little overall, but then you get Casino Nights, the best zone in the whole game. And then after that, I believe, was Hilltop, which is a zone that you can play in Sonic 2. And then Mystic Cave Zone, which you specifically called out as having really great game design and teaching you how to go through it.
Like, extremely clever level design in Mystic Cave Zone.
Yeah, and Mystic Cave was one of the zones where I most felt like if you start to understand that clever level design and learn your way around to just like kind of know what you're doing, then you'll find really cool alternate paths. And it's just so much of this game is so well designed, so carefully designed. If you're not good at the game and don't know your way around, then you'll end up in the lower path, which is generally slower and not so much about speed. It's more about, being more careful and making your way through. And that's more ideal for players who don't know their way around. And then once you start to get the hang of the game, then you can start going into the upper paths that are more about speed and perfect execution to make sure that you stay on the upper path. It's a game that starts good and gets better as you get better at it. Until you get to Metropolis Zone.
And then there are screws.
Yeah.
That screw you.
Okay, well.
How many times can I get this show canceled in one episode?
So yeah, Sonic 2, I think the ending's bad, but on the whole, it's an incredible game, I think.
I think it's a pretty good game. I can't really picture myself ever going back to replay it personally, but that's just me. But like, obviously, Sonic started out with good games like this, and Sonic 3, we talked about it last episode. They're very regularly, and I think CD is on there too. Like, just one of the best games in the Sonic franchise. Those three are the ones I hear thrown around the most.
Yep, it's 2, CD, and 3 on Knuckles.
Which is, I mean, obviously the games have to be good. Why else would Sonic still be one of the most recognizable video game characters in the industry? Just in general.
Yeah. And it's because he came from a really outstanding starting point.
And obviously he spawned the deluge of mascot platformers on the Super Nintendo and the Genesis and stuff like that. Because everybody wanted a piece of that Sonic pie.
Yes.
And nobody else got it.
When I was a kid, like, despite not owning a Genesis, I was more of a Sonic fan than a Mario fan. Even though I only had Nintendo platforms. Just Sonic was cool. And I was exactly the right age to still, I was in elementary school when Sonic Adventure 2 came out on GameCube. When Sonic came to Nintendo.
See, I played all of my Sonic at a friend's house because he had nothing but Sega consoles. And I had nothing but Nintendo and then later Sony stuff. So I didn't see a lot of Sonic. And that might be why I'm not super hot on the franchise as a whole. I didn't grow up with Sonic at all. Like, the first place I ever heard Emerald Hill Zone music was in Super Smash Flash. That is the first time I ever heard the theme of Emerald Hill Zone. I'm not joking.
That's unfortunate.
So I feel like that's a large part of it. And that I suppose that could be seen as unfortunate, but I mean, I've got other series that, like, look, last week or last episode, you said that you might get a little tired of me, like, talking bad about one of your favorite games, and obviously I didn't do that because I had an enjoyable time with it. But
I was also joking a little bit. But...
Well, I realized afterwards that the response I should have had was, Matt, Donkey Kong 64 is later on this list. You will have
I like Donkey Kong 64.
You will have ample opportunity to get revenge on me.
But I like that game. Like, yeah, it's got some garbage problems, but I think overall it's got a good foundation. But obviously we'll talk about that in like a year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe. That sounds about right. But I don't have anything else to say about the game itself.
I want to talk... I think we should talk a little bit about Sonic's moveset, but I don't know if we should do that before or after music.
We should do that. Let's go ahead and do that before music.
So, Sonic's moveset is... I want to say it's like half and half between like classic Sonic and modern Sonic in some ways.
I think it's more classic Sonic. I think really the only modern Sonic thing I can think of in his moveset is the homing attack.
Most of his moveset is completely original to Smash outside of his special attacks, but they're all things that are inspired by his personality in the modern games. Like he does a lot of like sort of breakdance kinds of kicks.
The Sonic in Smash is modern Sonic 100%.
Yes. But it's also the way that his spin dash works is very much Sonic 2. And like Sonic 3 and everything. And it's even I didn't really come to appreciate this until recently how good the spin dash in Smash Brothers is as a move, because just like it's your primary engage in the Sonic series, it's also a really good way to engage in Ultimate. And it's extremely predictable, but I think it has a little bit of super armor.
That wouldn't surprise me. That would fit, I suppose.
Yeah, so I think it's a good approach, even if it's extraordinarily predictable. I need to experiment more with Sonic because it was literally last night that I started to experiment with him and understand him a little. But he is Sonic. He feels like Sonic, and that's excellent. That's incredible.
And a lot of people like to sort of give him shit in that two of his special moves are functionally the same move, but I do think it fits, and I think people give it a little too much, more shit than it deserves. Moveset wise.
I think you could pull more things from modern Sonic for a more unique side B, or maybe do we didn't play Sonic 3, but in Sonic 3 there are 3 different shields that have different double jump abilities that you can do. Maybe give him the one that has him do like a flame burst forward. But it's too late for that.
It is too late. Thanks.
It's too late for him to get more colors. So I think I've been saying that I think, where does Smash Brothers go from here? Because you can't, Sakurai's been very open. There's no way everyone is here is happening again.
Oh yeah, there's no fucking way. No way.
And my thought on where it goes from here is, a series reboot. It still plays like Smash Brothers, but you make it as though it were the first one. So, you make a brand new, unique moveset from Mario that isn't just everything he does in Mario 64. You cut characters that don't really matter nowadays, like Ness. And as much as people seem to think that Captain Falcon is a character that matters because he's a literal meme, he would be first on the chopping block. I'm getting into this all to, the point of which is to say, I think Sonic stays.
If I had to pick 2 third parties that would stick around in that scenario, I want to say it'd be Sonic and Mega Man, and I think those would be the 2.
I think if there is one,
it'd be Sonic. Sonic is number 1 on that list for sure, 100%.
I think if there's 0, it's Sonic anyway.
Snake sure as hell isn't coming back.
Cloud
absolutely isn't coming. If everyone is here wasn't the central tagline of Ultimate, Cloud wouldn't have been in this game.
Cloud was almost the only one that didn't come back. So, yeah, Cloud's gone. But yes, Sonic, I don't think will ever leave the Smash Brothers series.
Yeah, I think he's a mainstay now, and I think he deserves to be a mainstay, because as Mega Man is pretty much the only other character I can think of that even comes close to being as significant as Sonic. Because Mega Man is big, but Sonic is a whole nother level.
Sonic is also more... He's basically a Nintendo character nowadays. He still shows up on other platforms, but he brings his A game to Nintendo.
Yeah, well...
Except Generations.
That's because Sakurai shows more respect for Sonic than a lot of the people that make Sonic games right now do.
Correct.
Which is something you can say about a lot of the third parties in Smash, cough, cough, Pac-Man. But...
Also until recently, Mega Man.
Until recently, Mega Man 100%.
I'd say Capcom has started treating Mega Man well because of Smash Brothers.
That I'd say that
Or
that
did
and
I
Mighty
say-
Number
did I say-
9 are both like.
I said Capcom, right?
Yes, you said Capcom.
Okay.
I believe.
I had a moment where I was like, did I just say Sonic treats Mega Man well?
Sonic treats Mega Man super well, and they're married now, and you've made that Smashterpieces canon. Good job, Matt. Let's talk about the music.
The music's incredible.
Music in
start
this
to
game's
finish,
really good.
except Wing Fortress.
So, I was going to bring up Wing Fortress last, but you know what? No, I'm glad we're bringing it up first. Why does it sound like I could slip this song into an Ultima 1 soundtrack playlist, and nobody would bat an eye?
Wing Fortress is the only song in the game that I would say is outright bad, and boy, it's bad.
This song was stolen from an unreleased DOS game because they forgot to write a song for the level until 3 days before ship. Changed my mind.
Oh, God.
It's such a bad song. Why is it so bad? It's the only song in the entire game that I would call outright, without a doubt, extremely bad. Everything else ranges from okay to incredible.
The part that really gets me is where it goes, "Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum."
Like, that's the part specifically that brings me into thinking, like, this is a song from a DOS game.
Yeah, it's bad. But thankfully, the rest of the music is really good. Some of which I would count in some of the best music we've heard in all of Smashterpieces.
There was a long period of time where I would have called Chemical Plant Zone my favorite video game song of all time. It's such a good fucking song.
It really, really is.
I love it so much. It's, like, to me, it is the best song in the game, but others do not agree because there are a lot of contenders for that title in this game.
Yes.
And all of them fair things.
So I would say my personal choice is Mystic Cave Zone. Mystic Cave Zone is the best jam, and every time I get to Mystic Cave Zone, I get so excited.
It's extremely good. I especially, I get to mime part of a song now. I like the
Yes.
Like, I like that part a lot.
So Mystic Cave Zone, it goes for a really experimental feel, because it's hard to put into any one genre or tone, but it does it so well, and I think that's why it's so stand out, because it doesn't sound like anything that you would recognize from a video game, but it's still incredible.
Mystic Killzone, God damn it.
Mystic Cave Zone.
I keep wanting to call it Mystic Killzone, I don't know why. Mystic Cave Zone is such a good song. I'm also very partial to, surprisingly, to Casino Night Zone.
Casino Night Zone is a very popular one.
It's a fantastic song. I agree with you. We were talking before recording that it sounds better sped up. Like when you get the speed shoes, it goes from being a pretty good song to being a holy shit, this song's fucking rad. But it's still a really nice, like, catchy tune the whole way through.
I think Casino Night Zone is one of the few songs in this game that has not done any favors by the Genesis sound chip, because the version of Casino Night Zone that is in Sonic Generations, that song it's the same exact composition, but I feel like it's a lot better because it got real jazz.
It's live instruments.
It's live instruments, and it's got the real jazz sound.
They grabbed an actual big jazz band, and it sounds fantastic.
Yes, I think that Casino Nights Zone is a song that needs to be done with a live jazz band.
I would agree.
You edit these songs and throw in the Generations version of Casino Nights.
You know what? I will, right here. I don't even know where that song plays in Sonic Generations. I just know it is in Generations.
It plays in the 3DS version.
Does it? Weird.
Yes.
Well, wait, no, because the version I have came with just the regular soundtrack for the console.
Because it was in DLC. It was like a DLC minigame in the console version.
Weird. It is a super good arrangement.
Casino Nights is a zone in the 3DS version, and it's incredible. And it goes on for like minutes because they're actually doing jazz things.
Oh no,
where they're
it's like a 7-minute song, dude.
Really?
Oh, it's super long compared to every other song in that game.
Well, the reason that it's so long is because it's a legit jazz composition where they're not just like it's not just a live instrument version of the original. The thing about jazz is that improvisation is a huge part of any given jazz performance, so you never really hear the same song twice. And every time they loop the song, it's different. It's improvised a bit. And that is a big part of why this song does so well with live instruments, is because that's jazz. Jazz is not something that can be done so well with a pre-recorded MIDI sound. When you have live jazz, you have something special. And I think that having a live jazz band do this song shows just how good it is. So I would say while Casino Night Zone is not the best sound file in Sonic 2, it's the best composition.
I could agree with that. In certain ways. I still think Chemical Plant is stronger in that regard, but just barely. And again, it all comes down to personal taste on that. But, like, it's a really, really good song. And it's one of the few songs on this list that translates super well to live performance, which is something, obviously, that should be noted, as we have been for the past, 5 minutes.
Because jazz.
Because jazz. It is honestly surprisingly not that often that you will find songs from retro games that translate extremely well to live performance like that.
Yeah.
Mostly because a lot of retro soundtracks were based on we have to cheat to get something that sounds good. Like, especially back in the NES or on the Game Boy, which obviously had less sophisticated sound chips than the Genesis or the SNES or something like that. But, like, the way it was done was you only had a certain amount of sounds that could play at the same time. It wasn't like today where it's just an MP3 file. The game had to, like, generate the sounds that this music was making, and it could only generate so many sounds at once. And they had to work around that, and that's why so much, like, retro music is so catchy, because they had to work through adversity.
And on the whole, I'd say that most of the Sonic soundtrack is better with that MIDI sound, with the feel of, like, sort of techno stuff. And actually, there is a Mystic Cave Zone version done by T. Lopes, the composer for Sonic Mania. He has a remix of Mystic Cave Zone that you can listen to that, for the most part, keeps that sound of a computer-generated thing. It just upgrades it to what modern computers can do. And it orchestrates the strength of Sonic's soundtrack.
Roughly the same thing is done in Generations with Chemical Plant. The music for Chemical Plant Zone. It's all roughly still the same type of instrumentation. It's just they added some live drums, and
yes,
that's really it. That's really all they changed about that song in Generations.
And I think the best classic Sonic songs are like that, where like Casino Night is a huge exception, where these songs aren't as good on a live performance because they need that computerized sound. And maybe that's just how entrenched in the 90s they are when, was techno a thing in the 90s? I don't know. I was like 5 years old in the 90s. But
I think that's when it started becoming a thing.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
At the very least, they were right off the this was 91. They were right off the heels of the 80s when, synthesized sounds were huge.
And speaking of 90s, by the way, I just want to give a quick shout out to, I don't think it's a particularly good song, but the Hilltop Zone theme song is 90s as shit.
Yes.
And I don't know what makes me say that, but you can feel the 90s in that song.
It's also, like, one of the most meh songs in the game. T. Lopes also has a version of that, by the way. I think he just did the whole Sonic 2 soundtrack, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, it's a good soundtrack. Sonic, that's the one thing I think that has remained consistent over all Sonic games, regardless of whether they are good or bad, is that pretty much all of them can at least boast a pretty good soundtrack.
Yes. I'd say they're, like, even the worst Sonic games have some pretty good soundtracks.
Sonic Forces has a fantastic soundtrack, which it's not allowed to, but that's all I've got to say on Sonic 2 in general, pretty much.
I'd say if you've never played Sonic 2 and for some reason have no interest in ever playing it, at least go listen to the soundtrack. The whole thing. Particularly T. Lopes' version, I guess, because apparently he remixed the entire soundtrack.
Let's move on then, shall we?
Move on by moving backwards, because
this is
guess
weird.
What console we're going to, boys and girls.
So, our next game is representing fighter number 6, Kirby. It is the 1993 NES game, Kirby's Adventure. Hey yo, what the fuck? I thought we were done!
I don't have an answer for you. I hope to have an answer by the time we record the next episode. But I don't have an answer for you right now.
Like, this is, at least as of right now, if some of the current rumors for DLC come true, it will not be. But as of currently, this is actually our last NES game on the list.
Also chronologically, it is definitely no matter what
chronologically,
happens,
it is the last NES game on the list.
No matter what happens, we're not playing an NES game released later than this.
It's bizarre to me that this game came out 2 full years after Link to the Past, 3 full years after Super Mario World. What?
I don't know.
Why?
The only thing remotely like this that I could think of in any other big series, especially a Nintendo series, is in Fire Emblem. We're not playing this game, but Thracia 776, which was the 5th Fire Emblem game, was released in 1999 for the Super Famicom.
Jesus. That's weird. That's super weird.
And it was released in 1999 as a digital distribution game for the Super Famicom, and wasn't released retail until 2000.
Anyways, I liked this game for a long time. This was one of the only 2 Kirby games I had ever played.
Are we counting Nightmare in Dreamland as eligible for counting?
I'd say specifically go for the NES version, because I am going to imagine Nightmare in Dreamland probably changes enough that it would be significant for a discussion podcast.
I don't think it changed any more than Mario 2 on All-Stars. Mario 2 on All-Stars did. I don't know.
Personally, I already have bought the NES Kirby's Adventure, and so that's personally the version that I'm going to play, which I'm going to go pull that up so I could say how much it costs. It is available on Virtual Console for the Wii U, so you can go buy it there. I believe that is the best place to buy it right now. It is not on the Switch NES library yet. I checked. That would have been super, convenient.
Ice Climber is the only game on our entire list that's on the Switch NES library, and that didn't launch until after we played Ice Climber.
Yep. It's also a 3D Classics game on the 3DS.
That I actually own, but I can't be bothered to fix my 3DS R button in time to play it.
That it is $7 on the 3DS eShop.
It probably doesn't use the R button.
It might not. I don't imagine it would. The NES didn't have shoulder buttons.
If I care enough, I might try to stream it from 3DS, but I don't have all the hardware yet, and I don't think I care enough.
And it's $5 on Wii U, which is where I bought it and where I will be playing it personally.
Mm-hmm.
So this game can be bought on multiple avenues, and I like this game. It's been a while since I've played it, but I remember enjoying it. It is the first game. So this is Kirby's second game, but in his first game he doesn't have copy abilities, which are kind of Kirby's thing now. He doesn't have them in every game, but when you think Kirby, you think copy abilities.
Yeah.
Like, that's his thing. So it didn't feel right to go play, like, Kirby's Dreamland, because Kirby can't do the thing we know Kirby for in that game. So Adventure was the next logical step, and I think is, if we're really looking for a game that's going to highlight what Kirby would go on to become, I think Adventure is the best place to go.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to playing this game again.
And we are recording our next episode for a very particular event, which we already talked about last week, but let's remind everyone.
Yeah, so we are going to be recording as part of the Nintendo World Report Telethon. They are raising money for Child's Play charity, which is a very, very good cause that buys games and toys and such for children, like, stuck in the hospital. And we are part of their schedule. We're going to record our Kirby's Adventure episode live. That'll be at 6 p.m. EST on January 26th. And you can go to NintendoWorldReport.com to find other details on the entire event as a whole. It's one of the biggest buttons on the homepage of the site.
Now, that is, of course, assuming that the telethon reaches the $2,000 mark, because more segments are unlocked as more money is raised. And if you plan on donating and you want your donation to count for double, go to NintendoWorldReport.com right now. It's right there on the page where you can donate to the charity. If you do it before the telethon starts, there is actually a fan of the site who has promised to match every donation that is before the telethon starts, dollar for dollar, up to $2,000.
Yep. So definitely this is now probably the best time to throw that up. And yeah, it's gonna be, I'm nervous about it, but I think it's gonna go fine.
There's gonna be a chat that you can join us in. You can talk to us while we're doing the episode in that chat. We're thinking of doing something special, but we're not sure yet.
We're not 100% sure exactly what we're going to do, but we'll see. We have time to plan still, luckily.
Make sure that you are there live on January 26th. The telethon starts at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and we are on at 6 p.m. Eastern Time.
And I don't know if I can think of any other time anytime soon where we are going to record an episode live. So if you want to get in on that, this might be your only chance for a while.
Yes. You can go to NintendoWorldReport.com for details, and just make sure you donate because Child's Play, an incredible charity, and this is an incredible event, and we will see you there on January 26th.
Be there, or be square. You don't want to be a square, because Kirby's a circle.
Circles are friends.
Yeah. You can also follow us on Twitter, and on Facebook, and on YouTube. We are Smashterpieces on every single one of those. You can, Twitter is where we're most active. That's where you'll see pretty much every post of, hey, we're live. Facebook, we neglect a little bit, but that's mostly because...
Everyone neglects Facebook.
Who follows things on Facebook? But you can follow us there, and sometimes posts do go up about live streams, so there's that. And all of our VODs, or at least the VODs that we can put up.
The ones that we remembered to export before Twitch deleted them.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly the reason. If you're wondering why certain VODs aren't up, that's why. We will endeavor to make sure VODs for all the games are up on that channel as well as every episode, so that's the place also to go follow if you just want everything in a nice, convenient spot. You can find us on anondino.squarespace.com. That is anon as in anonymous, dino.squarespace.com. That is our website where you can find not only every single episode of the show, but also links to both of our Twitch channels and an entire list of games that we are planning to play for this show. There's not much more to talk about. We will see you all on January 26th, or if you're listening after that, next time. Until then, my name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And join us next time when we come to talk about Kirby's Adventure.